Cake Hank. Cake Hank. You love the cake Hank, right? That's my favorite part.
That's when we're gonna just keep adding more arms every week.
It's gonna be like the arms of Vishnu every week.
That's right. We'll add more drawing utensils.
Welcome everybody to Pencil Podcast, your favorite pandemic podcast, brought to you weekly. Michael Manley, weekly Wednesdays at 8 p.m. EST.
Right.
To your video scope. We are present on Facebook. We have a Facebook page that you can check out. And also we're on the tubes. We're on the YouTubes also.
The YouTubes, right. And subscribe.
Yes, please.
To the YouTubes.
What I love about the podcast is that every guest brings in like a vapor trail of their own,
a vapor trail of
of tears of fans and friends of them, and then they kind of like hang around afterwards, which is really cool. So what'll really help our numbers is if you like, subscribe. Hey, Matt. And also smash that alert button so you know when we post information about the next show. So you don't have to worry about it. You have to go, it's Wednesday again? I knew I forgot something. Mike, I can't tell you how many times people go, oh, that was tonight. Like
it happens to us. What? Where? 5 minutes to the podcast.
So before I do my intros and my pithy banter, I just want to let people who are watching for the first time know how this works. This is a live LIVE podcast where you get to interact with your favorite cartoonists, Mike Manley and Jamar Nicholas. And from time to time, we have a special guest on, another creative in arms. We run the gamut, Mike Manley. We have cartoonists, illustrators, directors, animators,
hobos,
puppeteers, hobo puppeteers. We kind of run the gauntlet on different creatives. And one thing that I really enjoy about the show is that everybody has a story, right? And I think to get to any type of pinnacle in your career, it takes a lot of sacrifice and long nights. And I think those stories are really inspiring. So I always like to hear from people from different sides of the creative angle.
Well, everybody's story has a different path. You know, everybody. There's something I tweeted earlier today because I've been seeing a lot of young people on the Twitters, sort of, being a little sad and a little down about things, and one of the things I think there's a lot of people compare themselves. There's a lot of FOMO, fear of missing out, or a lot of comparing yourself. Like I'm 27 and this person's 19,
right?
Right, and they're all ready to fry cook. Oh, Mr. Krabs. I think that is something that our generation didn't experience in the same way because we didn't have social media driving and putting all these things up in front of you all the time, saying, so there's a lot of that going around. And
right.
So I said, everybody's path is different. There's never been an equal playing field. Everybody's story is going to be different, and everybody's individual. What might take one person 5 years might take another person 6. Might take one person 6 months. But I think it doesn't really do you a lot of good to always compare yourself to other people because it just makes you frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
And that energy you could actually put into yourself, into your doing your own thing, working on your own issues, your own training, so to speak. You know?
Right. No, yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And there's always been pressures as long as the teenager has been a thing that makes money. Magazines, television, every time you turn around, there's somebody telling you you're not good enough, or you don't smell good enough, or your hair is not long enough.
Well, that's definitely true. I mean, everybody stinks. Come on.
right?
You don't have the right kind of the right kind of jeans, or you don't have the right kind of this or the right kind of, your cell phone is not stylish. It's like one of the things I notice, especially on my feed, because like if you go buy a t-shirt, then it's like all of a sudden like all these dad bod t-shirts, like nothing but t-shirts, right?
Yeah.
Just I get swamped with t-shirt ads all the time.
Yeah.
And or you'll see they'll say, well, this kind of shirt's not in fashion. This color, we've decided that this color is not in fashion anymore. You got a purple shirt, you got a blue, sorry, can't, and it's like all this things that you've got to be constantly have anxiety about, like, oh my God, I'm not wearing the right kind of dad bod shirt. You know what I mean? I'm not eating the right kind of macaroni and cheese.
Yeah. And that can grind people down, especially if you don't have the, I don't know, the tools to just kind of tune that out, right? Even, we used to talk a lot about crits and being critiqued and giving crits, is that, a lot of people don't know how to take a crit, Mike, because, all of these things that you watch it's curated reality. Nobody shows the bloopers in their YouTube tutorial, right? It's all perfect, line, layer. And it's like, oh man, I can't do that. I can't draw a straight line. And then, when you actually have a professional that says something like, this is good, but you need to work on that. A lot of people are just attuned to want to hear the good part. Or like, where's the part where you pat me on the head and say is hot? Like, not
yeah. I think, part of that is generational too. You always hear, when I was in art school, I'd hear stories in the old days about, teachers who would, throw paintings out the windows and throw paintings down the steps. Or if you sucked, they just didn't come over to your work, period. They didn't say they smoking the cigar. They just went right past.
They ghosted you right in the middle.
Right. Yeah. They just let you know, like, you don't even rate me berating your work. I think, but that was something I definitely noticed a lot in the past month or two. I would say that I see a lot of people kind of being sad and FOMO on Twitter.
Well, it's got to be tough, especially for young people, where it's kind of like, your options were limited, and now you can't leave your house. You know what I mean? And your existence is in your bedroom, even more than before. So, you could think about this as this be a perfect time to hone your skills. Or you watch a lot of what was the big thing a couple of years ago, Mike? Deviant art. Everybody had deviant art tutorials where, you can collect those, but if you're not actually drawing, it's not helping you. So I guess what I'm trying to say is people can easily get caught up in the idea of just being around a lot of stuff doesn't actually help you improve if you're not doing anything with it.
Well, it doesn't help you paddle. That's one of the things I always say, is that what happens to a lot of people after they leave school is they realize that school was the thing that was making them. You got to paddle. You got to do your homework. You got to do this. People are doing this. You're running along with people, but you're not actually you're not generating the momentum. The momentum is generated by the process of being around all these people and having deadlines and things like that. And then when that goes away and you go out into the world and you have to start making your way, because no one will say, send me your portfolio.
Right.
No one will say, well, you need to keep brushing up on this thing. And it's hard for some people. I have some friends who suffered through that the first year or two out of school. There's a little bit of, unless you got hired right away, or you maybe do a little regrouping,
So I think this will be a perfect place to start, because the beginning of my relationship with our guest happened at a portfolio review, and I don't even know if he remembers this.
He was reviewing your portfolio?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, well, we go back a bit. So let me
have like the.
let me give a shout out to our sponsors. Pencil to Pencil is always brought to you by the loving people at Graphicsly. You see the John above my head. You know the John. It's right there.
That John or
that John over not that John. This one. Who made Clip Studio Paint? Yes, right. That Clip Studio Paint, the one that almost every cartoonist uses every day. And also our good buddy John Morrow, who is the publisher of Draw Magazine,
and the Kirby Collector,
and the Lego Brick
Retro
Collector,
Fan, the Brick Journal,
Rough Stuff, all of those.
Yeah. And he's having a sale right now, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
He was having a sale on a bunch of draws because we're doing clearance sale. But you can always get digital copies.
Yeah. Draw Magazine.
Print copies are going out of print.
You're going hopefully all the way digital, right? And no more print. So if you are missing a couple of issues of Draw Magazine, this is the time to fill out your collection. So thank you all to our sponsors. Like I said, I'm Jamar Nicholas, and I'm joined by the proverbial hip by my best bud, Michael Manley. Say hi, Mike. It's great to be here again. And yeah, so I want to bring our guy in. So we talk a lot about the lineage of cartooning, and also I think inspiration is a huge part of, like you have Kniff guys, or you have so-and-so guys, you have Foster guys, or almost like schools of cartooning. And I think for somebody like myself, a young man from the city, there are things that I didn't really connect to. Like when I would open the Sunday paper in Philly, the Inquirer, I'll tell you right now, Mike, I didn't like Prince Valiant. I looked at Prince Valiant.
He always spoke highly of you, though.
And I'm just like, I don't get it. Why does he have like the Mo Howard haircut? Like I couldn't connect to it. You know what I'm saying? And that's like nothing about the art or nothing against the art. It's just I needed something that I could like, feel like I had some sort of.
Why you didn't read stories of King Arthur as a youth, Jamar?
But this is funny though. But my favorite strip was Doonesbury, which has nothing to do with anything. As far as
I always found that odd, since I wouldn't think that most kids would be into something that was political.
Oh, right. Well, and I think what was really important to me, especially when I was finding my way through the early parts of wanting to be this, is that I found out that there were other people in the city that were comic book artists. And I didn't, I talk a little bit about
in your school or not in your school.
No, in Philly,
yeah.
Like not school. I was the cartoon kid, and they hated my guts when I was in high school. But somehow I wound up running into Reggie Byers, and the Philly's a big place, but it's small at the same time. And I had known that he was a comic book artist and that I could actually talk to him. These are like two things that just lined up together. And I can't really remember how it happened, but we wound up having lunch, and I brought in my portfolio. And
what year was this?
Let's ask Reggie Byers. Hi, Reggie.
What's going on, John?
Hey, brother. I'm talking about you like you're not here.
Hey, I'm here. I'm sitting back here like an OG.
So wait a minute. I'm just gonna embarrass you, Reggie, because
dude, I heard that. I'm like, wait a minute.
This picture just popped up. You ready for this?
Yeah.
Oh,
kapow! I just posted that several days ago.
Wow,
man, and
that's fantastic.
I made a challenge to myself, like, can I get back down to that weight, yo?
Reggie, was those your Fresh Prince years? Was that around the same time?
Yeah, actually it was, Jazz.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
I have to say so. I had cross colors on and everything.
Wow, that's a beautiful. Oh my gosh. And I like the joke. We could talk about the photo shoot another time, but
yeah, that was crazy.
So Reggie is. And we'll hear Reggie's origin story, but Reggie is a influential cartoonist from the Philadelphia area. And back in the early to mid 90s, and maybe even further back, because Reggie's been in the business for a long time. Reggie started popping up all over the city as like the guy that does comic books. And it just kind of like, and you know this too, Reggie, just kind of flowed through the city. It's like, oh, there's a dude here that does that. Oh yeah, how can I find this person? And then when this cover is from the insert in the Sunday Philadelphia newspaper. They had a magazine section.
The Inquirer.
And when this came out, and I told Reggie, embarrassingly to him, maybe I saved this issue for years. I think it just disintegrated.
Wow!
But
because you clutched it to your heart so much.
Well, it's like when we had Dawood on a couple, like was it last year or early last year?
That was pre-pandemic, I think. Yeah.
It is people like Dawood and Reggie were so influential in my courage to be a cartoonist. And I don't know if I've ever told Reggie this. I'll wait till the end of the thing. But having things like this just kind of made me kind of come out onto the cliff and jump. So just to wrap the story up. So somehow I got Reggie's phone number. I met him at the Bourse, the commons underneath the Bourse Hotel.
Oh, yo!
And I think I
remember that now.
And I don't think I had enough money to buy lunch, but I just showed up and just with a growling stomach showed you my portfolio.
Shoot,
do you remember that? You remember that, Reggie? Remember
now that
the growling Jamar clutching a portfolio?
No, well, I'm probably because I didn't. My growling stomach probably overpowered hearing his. So the epitome. What's on Brad?
Yeah, and I don't remember what you said, but I was just I was fascinated by Reggie and being in the business and things like that. And here we are, fast forward years. I don't even want to
right.
And now we're in a place where Reggie is still in the game. He's got a Kickstarter that's going on. He's reinvigorating some of his IP. And I think this would be a perfect time to have him on the show. So sorry for the really long introduction.
It's all good. I appreciate being here. You guys are really, really just gracious to allow me to be on here, and I truly appreciate it. And the great Mike Manley. Are you kidding me? He's like the Batman aficionado, man. It's like, oh my gosh. It's like your Batmans were the ones where it was Jim Aparo, you, and that's it.
Wow. Well, I'm honored to be in that stable.
Well, good night, everybody. No, that's fantastic. And you know what? And it's great. And I always say that because people always ask me about Mike. Mike has no idea how many people go, how you know Mike Manley? You know?
Right.
How y'all roll out? It was like, no. But I think that's what makes this podcast really special is that you have experts who are giving that real talk to the people. So
that's right.
Well, Reggie, I feel like I've been running my mouth. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your origin story? And we always do this with our guests. Like, tell us how you kind of got started as an artist and how'd you get into comics?
You know what? I think like most of us, we all started off wanting to draw comics because we were avid readers of them. And I think as far back as I can remember, maybe as far back as, middle school, 7th grade, 6th grade. One of my buddies back then, Chris Etheridge, he and I would make up comic book characters and create our own comic book pages. And I think the draw, excuse my pun, but the drawing comics, I think came from the fact that once we found out that actual people drew them and wrote them and created them, we were like, whoa, we can do this too, And I think we were doing homemade comic books for quite a while, even through high school. And I will never forget my first shot at even being anywhere remotely close to anyone who was doing comic books and were actually getting them out there was it had been 1983 or 4. I grew up in Norristown, Pennsylvania, and I was heading up DeKalb Street, which is the main street in Norristown, and I saw a sign outside a row home that said Kamiko, COMICO. I actually, when I saw the sign, I pronounced it Comico. I'm like, Comico? What?
Right. Yeah.
So, I was too scared to, like go to the door and knock. So I ran back and got my best friend. I told my best friend, like, I think there's a comic book company in Norristown. And he's like, nah, get out of here. So
Right.
me and my buddy Chris, we rolled up to the place late one night, went around the back of the building and grabbed a trash bag out of their outside trash can in their backyard and took it home.
Wow. You're gonna like forensic files?
Forensic for real. We took the bag home, we ripped it open, dumped it out, and we just came across all this information and about, we're a new comic book company. We're going to come out on the market. We're going to come out with a book called Primer, and we've got a character called Az and Slaughterman, and we're going to come up with a character called Grendel. And we're just like, we looked at each other like madmen. We're like, a comic book company is in Norristown,
Yeah.
So we got the nerve to go back about a week later and knocked on the front door of our portfolios. And never forget, Jerry Giovinco, one of the founders of the company, answered the door, graciously allowed us to come in. He looked at our portfolios. He let us down gently. Let us down gently. And, at my age, memory comes and goes. But all I can say is, long story short, somehow, some way, I think because I just kept being persistent, they ended up saying, in order for us to get rid of this guy, we need to just keep him close and hire him to be like a gopher.
Or he'll keep stealing our garbage.
Right, exactly. I believe it. So I ended up working there as an office person, feed the cat up, take out the trash. And the whole time I was learning the whole process of self-publishing comic books. And this was in the beginning, but just as they were releasing the first issue of Primer, I met it was Jerry Giovinco, Phil Lasorda, rest his soul, Bill Cucinato, Matt Wagner, Vince Argandesi, rest his soul, and their brother Dennis Lasorda. And so
what year was this now? Like 82,
it had to be
83?
1983.
Yeah.
I would think about 83 because, like I said, they put out the first Primer, where they just rolled out, the founders had their own characters. So Jerry Giovinco had done Slaughterman, Phil Lasorda created Az, Bill Cucinato created a character called Scrog, and those, and then there was Andrew Murphy. Andrew Murphy created a character called Victor, and those were the four characters that were in the first issue of Primer. So they released that one, and the Primer first issue got a lukewarm reception from the industry, but man, when they released number 2, with Grendel on the cover, that's all she wrote. That's all she wrote. All of a sudden, people started paying attention to Kimiko. They started going out the gate from there. And at the time, I was Matt Wagner was the head editor for Primer, starting with number 2, and so they hired me to be his assistant editing Primer. So Matt and I were editing Primer for about 2 or 3 issues until things started taking off real heavy for him. That's when he released the Grendel first issue, and then he came to them with the concept of Mage, and then things kind of just took off from there. So I was working with them for about, I guess, a good year or two before they, of course, I was constantly saying, I can draw, right? I can draw, right? But the whole time I'm there, they're giving me tips and they're, telling me showing me the basics of, of sequential art. And, at the same time, I'm learning about how the publishing industry works from the standpoint of a small independent black and white publisher. And right around 85, I think they got the rights to do Robotech from Harmony Gold, which of course Robotech was based on the Japanese anime Macross, Mospeada, and Southern Cross. And it was just wonderful that they were gracious enough to say, you know what, Reg, we're going to give you a shot. You can draw one of the books. So I got the job to draw Robotech New Generation.
Were you a fan of now? Were you a fan before that
I was a fan of Macross. I was a fan of Macross, but at the time I didn't know anything about Mospeada, to which of Harmony Gold, when they got the rights, they changed it to Robotech and changed all the names because Macross New Generation and Robotech Masters, they were actually three separate animated cartoons that had nothing to do with each other.
Right.
And somehow, some way, Harmony Gold weaved them all together to weave this tale of an ongoing story called Robotech. It was amazing how they did it. But I can't remember exactly how they did it. But Kimiko got the rights to do that brand that reached our shores as a full color comic book.
So now somebody was there, obviously was a fan of that material.
Yeah,
to go after it, right?
Right, exactly. I mean, I know it wasn't me because when I got the news, I was like, "What?" But I'm not sure exactly how they, got the rights to do it or how they even knew about, Robotech or Macross, but it happened. It happened, and that's where I got my first shot. They gave me a contract to draw the Robotech New Generation comic book, and at that time, once I found out how comic books were published, thanks to them, that's when I said, you know what? With my first paycheck, I'm going to fund my own little comic book on the side. And that's when I created Shuriken, which is a comic book, a very manga influenced comic book about a girl who was a bodyguard that worked for a League of Assassins, but never killed nobody. Yeah.
Right. And it's funny because my first job at DC was working on another version of Robotech, Robotech Defenders, because that through Judy Hunt, because I came out to assist Judy Hunt, who was doing Evangeline for Kimiko, and then she got this job at DC, and then I met her husband, or then husband, in Chicago, and he'd seen some other samples of mine, and then they hired me to come out and help her work on that, do the robots and stuff and everything. So it's funny, there were two at the same time. There's like these different versions of the same.
Yes, they were.
I guess
same brand.
Well, the same brand, but like you said, they actually were not related. They just smashed it all together. You know?
Yeah, and the originators, the ones who own the copyright or the brand, I'm surprised they allow Harmony Gold to even do that. I guess they look, whatever works and whatever sells over there, fine, let's do it.
Right. I mean, that was such if I can remember back that far, you guys showing your age is that kind of like fresh take on anime was still real. I hate to say foreign, but it wasn't prevalent like it is now.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Well, yeah, and I and a few years, maybe 2 years before that, briefly dated a girl when I was back in Michigan, and she was part of this anime club, and they had friends in Japan that would send that stuff over,
like the tapes,
and then they would dub it, and then for the club they would put out the early fan tapes, I guess, of that material, like Captain Harlock and all that. So you had people that were like, I guess, the original weebs or whatever you want to call it, way back in the early 80s, who were connecting with people in Japan.
Yes.
And then they would send the stuff over on VHS, and then they would basically redub it. This is before they were doing it. And then within like a year or two, you had all those shows coming over.
Yeah,
on Channel 17 or whatever,
Yeah. That's right.
I remember seeing in high school, this was 85, 86. I remember somebody bought, maybe 87, somebody bought in a VHS tape. It was like the ELP, the extra log play. It was like 8 hours, and it looked horrible. Of Dragon Ball.
Dragon Ball. Oh man.
And it was just like, I don't even know what I'm looking at. That's how fresh that stuff was. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So Reggie, let me ask a couple more questions about your early time in Kimiko. So, and you went from doing mini comics with your buddy and things like that to kind of like being thrown into the pool, so to speak. I mean, you were there for a bit. Did you have any I don't know, kind of growing pains, like switching from doing, kind of like stuff in your house to, commercial professional work?
I think the growing pain, and I think that might be with a lot of artists, was just the whole procrastination part. I think that's the thing that really just kind of like chased me during that time, and I was a slave to it, sadly. And even now, to the point, it's like some old habits just still seem to linger when it comes to, like, I'll get to it. I'll get to it. I know how many pages I got to do. I know I've already got it all laid out. I'll get to it. And then by the time you look at the calendar, you're like, oh, I got to get to it.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think getting used to being self-disciplined schedule-wise, because back then when they brought on Diana Schutz and Bob Schreck to help with the movement of the books and the editing and all that, Diana was an incredible editor for me, because she was like this mom type that would just kind of like get on me if I was like, looking like I was going to run late on an issue, and it's like, that's the sort of thing that kind of whipped me into shape. But I think just getting used to a schedule was the hard transition part, because before it was doing it for fun, doing it because I just enjoyed doing it. And even when I created Shuriken, I did it when I wanted to, at least the first issue. But with Robotech, it's like, look, we've got a schedule, because after you pencil it, it's got to get handed over to the anchor. After he inks it or she inks it, it got handed over to the letterer. And then it's got to get, colored. And then,
and you've got to draw the stuff that's not as much fun to draw.
You better believe it.
You do. And if you, like a lot of people do in the beginning, you draw the fun stuff first, and then you're like, oh,
sure.
I got like 3 days of drawing backgrounds or something.
I got to draw I got to draw a NASCAR race over the weekend. That's right.
Oh, you did?
No, I'm just saying.
I was about to say.
So now hold on. Now I talk once in a while about I don't know, kind of like how things kind of sync up in really interesting ways. Like Reggie, if you weren't going down the street, you didn't see that sign, and Kamiko was not in your town.
No.
Right? It's kind of like those type of things. And like listening to stories from Mike and a lot of guys from this generation where, the window for getting into comics was so small, you had to be in New York.
Yeah.
Right? That's not even like, if you were Minnesota, you got to go to New York.
Period.
So do you feel like if you weren't at Kamiko, you probably would have found your way into the business another way?
I think so, but nowhere near that early. Nowhere near that early. I mean, I ate, myself and my closest friends who love comics, we ate, drank, and slept comic books.
Yeah.
And love to create them. So I do know that, I would have been in the industry, but it wouldn't have been as soon as it happened. It would not have happened in 85. It probably would not have happened until, like, good Lord, maybe 90, because I would have been relentlessly chasing down, the larger companies. I'd have been chasing down, at that time it was, First, Capital, those. And
this is the pre-black and white boom.
Right. Exactly. That was amazing. The black and white boom was wonderful for me for when I was doing Shuriken, because it was like a two-edged sword for me. I was doing a popular full color comic book based on an anime for an up and coming and attention grabbing company, and had this white hot black and white comic that I self-published as well. So I was blessed on two fronts at the same time. And at the time, being 20-something years old, 22 years old, I was just like, man, I don't even know how I even handled it back then at the age that I was and the maturity level that I had, that I was. But Jamar, I was blessed to be in that position, and it's just, I believe that everything happens just when it is supposed to in a lot of cases. Yeah. Because I'm like, that's a great question, because I think I still would have been doing comics, but it wouldn't have happened that early. Yeah. It wouldn't have happened that early.
And also something that we talk about a lot on the podcast is just beyond all of the fantastic things about, staying up all night and drawing things and following your bliss and all that kind of stuff, is that there's just a baseline grit that you have to even enter the business, right? I think about in your story, how many people who would have just driven by that sign and go, oh wow, that must be cool.
Yeah.
I wish I could knock on the door. I wish I could steal the trash, Reggie Byers,
Oh,
and go through. You know what I'm saying? Like there's something, I feel like there's like a call to action that we all kind of answer, that
Yeah,
for some
you're right.
reason some people never, I don't know, cross that bridge. And I wonder, I wonder about that a lot.
yeah. True.
It's
So
it's really
true.
an unspoken thing. So tell us about kind of like how did that all wrap up and what happened next in your career?
No, that was my fault.
Oh, okay.
We were talking about young and impetuous and dumb, and at that time, I think getting back to Diana Schutz, it's like she was an incredible editor, and she was staying on top of me as far as getting the books done and everything. And I think entering my second year of doing Robotech, I just got caught up. I got caught up. I mean, I was like, I was flying out to a different city like every other. They were flying me out to different cities every other week to either a bookstore appearance or a comic book convention or an anime con, you know. And I mean, I was one time at a show sitting right next to Malcolm Jamal Warner from the Cosby Show. You know, it's like Reggie Byers that does Robotech and Malcolm Jamal Warner from the Cosby Show, and he's looking at me like, "Sup? Who are you?"
Right.
You know, so I got caught up, man. It's like, and what happened was I really just started doing the book when I want it, thinking I could just turn it in and it'll be okay. You know, I'll turn it in. You know, I think maybe somewhere along the last 3 issues of my Robotech run, I was just, you know, out at the clubs at night, partying, having a good time, chasing girls, you know, and then coming home and realizing, oh, my book is due tomorrow. And I still got 12 pages to do, you know. And so popping a couple of no-dose pills and staying up all night and doing 12 pages one night, you know. And then, you know, Diana looking at me and saying, Rez, work as usual, it's very nice, but really, it's your timing is horrible, you know. And so at one point, she finally said, Reg, these books can't be late because of you. So we gotta let you go. You know, we know that you're focusing on this and Shuriken, by the way, which is doing well, but we're going to find out, we've got another artist lined up to finish off Robotech. And so I, you know, basically just SpongeBob, you're fired.
Wow. Now, how did that feel? Because if you'd gone back a year before that and you'd been fired, that probably would have been more devastating, right?
Yes, absolutely. It felt horrible because I knew it was my fault.
Right.
You know, I couldn't blame anybody. I couldn't blame her. Couldn't blame the company. It was me, because I was like, you know, when you know, go right to the Peter Parker saying, with great power comes great responsibility. There were hundreds, if not thousands, of people that would have traded places with me to be in my position. And, you know, 2 years into the game, my head swelled. I thought I was the man, you know, and schedule be damned. I'll get to it when I get to it, you know.
Wow.
And so when it happened, it definitely put a pin in me, you know, deflated me. But then I just put my focus on, you know, on my company on the side with my friends, and continued publishing Shuriken, and published like 3 or 4 other titles that were produced by my friends. And at that time, I was just focusing on Shuriken, you know. That was it. But Kamiko was still buddy. We were still friends. I could come up, I'd roll up there anytime I wanted, you know, hang out, ate with them, checked out what they were doing lately. You know, we love your eggs, but we just don't want you to join us anymore.
Right. Yeah, we'll go get a slice, but you can't work here.
I suppose in a way, you were fortunate that you had your thing on the side, because one of the things, and when I got in, was that you were afraid to be late because they wouldn't give you another issue.
That's right.
They would not go 2, 3, 4, 5 issues with you being late. It's like, if you were late, you automatically wouldn't get the next issue. They'd get a fill-in right away.
Yep.
And then you would get the reputation of being a person who was late, which means that they might like you, but, you know, if you there were guys in the begin that I knew in the beginning that were good and could do something every month, and there were guys who could do something like every other month because they just weren't fast enough, or their process was different. But yeah, you did not want to get stuck as being the guy who, at least I didn't want to be, get stuck as the guy who couldn't produce monthly. So as soon as I got the opportunity, it's just like you just got to go.
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah.
And what year was this when you kind of wrapped up at Kamiko? Do you remember?
I want to say 87. I'm pretty sure it was like around 1987 because I started drawing Robotech around the end of 85, maybe the beginning of 86. But I know I worked on the book for about a year and a half, 2 years tops, and would have been there longer had I had the discipline and the self-control and the fortitude to listen.
That's a difficult transition, I think, for a lot of artists to go through from the dream of doing it to the reality of doing it. And the benefit of working for a company that had older established people is they were better at sort of scaring you, like right from the beginning, and a lot of people can't ever get over that hump of, I don't feel the muse today, whatever that is. I can't sit down and work, and that's a real crucial stage of your development of an artist, and it's worse for us because we're not actually getting in our car and driving. Like if you worked in animation, you would get up and you would drive in every day, and you'd have to work in the place, right? And they would come along and they would say, "Oh, how are you doing today? What are you doing? Did you get the scene done or whatever?" But when you're at home,
distractions.
Hey, before we
TV.
oh man, there's a famous quote that I don't remember who said it, and this is kind of crazy now that we're in a pandemic. When you work at home, you're always at work.
That's right. Absolutely.
Right, and it's really on you to find some way of making it work, making the people in your life that you live with understand that you're working. Right, I'm work like.
Oh man,
like you're just playing. Come on, you're not working. I saw you drawing a little cartoon over there. That's not real work.
I saw you laid on your stomach drawing cartoons. You ain't
That's
working.
Right.
Come take out this trash, Reggie.
I got a load of clothes. I got a load of clothes need to go in the wash machine.
Did you have a separate? Did you have us in your where you were living? Did you have a separate workspace and living space, or was it all mashed up?
You know what? It was either or. It's a little bit of both because there were places in Kamiko where if you wanted to come and work, you could. There were drawing desks there, so there were times that if I couldn't focus at home, that I could come there and sit. Because there were times that I was at Kamiko through the night. I would start drawing at 7 in the evening, eat dinner. And the next thing I know, the sun is coming up and I'm in the office by myself and I see Jerry coming in, at 9, 10 o'clock saying, "You've been here all night?" I'm like, "Yeah, man, I was grinding," But at the time I also lived in a bachelor pad with 3 other dudes and we all had our own bedroom. So I would sometimes draw at home, but at home I didn't have a drawing desk. I just had a lap board. Right. So for comfort's sake, I would usually go draw at Kamiko. But if I wanted to just sit around and fool around while I'm working, then I drew at home. But
was the energy at least inspiring when you were in the bullpen? Like, at least when I go into the office, it's on.
Crazy. Oh my! And that's why most of the time I drew the books when I was there, because I mean, at any given moment, Matt might pull out something like, "Rich, check out the cover of Mage 3. You know, I'm just like, ah! You know,
Mhm.
or, you know, somebody might say, yo, we just might get the rights to do Johnny Quest. I'm like, are you serious? You know, but the energy of just all of that going on, and you're hearing background talk about, you know, Diamond Comics think they're going to be the only one distributing comics in the next 10 years. You know, this industry talk that you're just like, wow, you know, and I'm
Mhm.
learning while I'm drawing. It's just, there's so many stories I could tell, you know,
Yeah.
but to protect the living and those who are no longer here, I'm going to shut up.
We have our first question for you tonight, Reggie.
Okay.
A pencileer in good standing, our buddy Eternity Forever says, Reggie, did they provide model sheets and style guides for your Robotech work? And what did you keep?
Man, first of all, I never kept anything. I mean, it's like anything that I kept, I never had it for long, because it's like, you know, I could go to a show and, you know, and like most of the artists, you have stacks of pages for sale. You know what I mean? So a lot of my original work was sold, you know, because we got to keep our originals. You would split the original pages with the anchor, you know. So
Sure.
like a 32-page book, you know, you would get half and he would get half. And sometimes you guys just, I'll take that page, I'll take this page. There are times that, you know, Rich Rankin and he inked a lot of my pages in Robotech. And so we would just, you know, switch off. I'll take this page. I'll take this one. Oh, I did this double page spread. I'll take this one. But model sheets, there were no model sheets. They supplied no model sheets. You know what?
Hmm.
The way we drew Robotech is that for each new episode that we were doing the comic book version of, we were given a VHS tape of that
Hmm.
episode. We would go home, pop it into the machine, and simply watch the whole episode from beginning to end, then go back and do your thumbnails of each page based on where you wanted to freeze frame to make sure that the story was, you know, flowing correctly, from the beginning of the story to the end of the story, making sure that it mirrored an actual episode perfectly. And it was kind of fun because it's like you really couldn't draw the book. Well, yes, you could, but I know for me, I would not draw the book without actually drawing what I saw on the screen that I freeze framed.
Mhm.
If I wanted a dynamic shot of Lin Minmay, you know, screaming Rick, I would freeze her where she's going Rick, and I would just draw her. You know what I mean? Um, and then there were pages where, you know, some stuff you just couldn't freeze frame because it was too blurry, so I had to just draw it myself. Um, illustrators like Neil Vokes, he
Mhm.
illustrated Robotech Masters. Now Neil was just like this amazing being where he would watch a whole episode, and I'm sure he would freeze frame here and there, but for the most part, he would put his own amazing creativity and layout skills to work without relying as much as maybe me on freeze framing and drawing what I saw and putting it together. So there were no model sheets. The only model sheets were a VHS tape of each episode that we had to draw.
That's funny because when I did the Robotech thing, we actually bought the models and
Wow.
built the models. And then when I worked on Transformers, because of course, if you work on Robotech, then we go to Marvel, they go, "Oh, you like to draw robots? Why don't you work on Transformers?" They gave me some reference of the previous issues. I bought some toys, but then I had the model sheets, and then you realize the model sheets for the cartoon had nothing to do with the toys.
Yeah, the toy.
You
Yeah,
know,
the
like
toys.
how
Yeah.
they transformed and
Definitely not.
everything is like it
That's
had
right.
nothing. One had nothing to do with the other. You know.
That's right.
So you
Absolutely.
had to find that in between, like, well, I don't really have a turnaround for this guy, or I don't really have a. So you have to sort of make it up. Yeah, that was a very odd time. It's hard for younger people to understand because there was no internet, so you couldn't just like Google.
No.
I want to see Starscream model sheet 1986. You know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Mike,
It's something else.
Mike, was there also a point of it where you're not wholly attached to the world that this stuff is in? So it's like, oh, there's three airplanes that look exactly the same: the red one, the purple one, and the blue one. All right.
Well, you know, yeah. I mean, it was an odd thing because I mean, I was not a fan of
Right.
Transformers, right? My
Right.
little brother was probably more a fan of it, you know, and I had seen it,
Yeah.
but it wasn't like I was more a fan of Johnny Quest or something, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because
It was
that was what was big when I was a kid, right?
Yeah.
So, but you take on the challenge of being a professional, and you want to, like Reggie's saying, you want to do justice, because the worst thing, you know, as a fan, whenever you would see something you were a fan of, or somebody did a bad job, you kind of get pissed off, like, oh man, they're not even trying. They're not even trying.
Yep.
That looks like crap. This head doesn't look like that. It looks like this, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what? You know, there's a really hardcore nitpicky fandom, the Ghostbusters fans.
Really?
Oh, really?
Yeah, like there's been Ghostbusters comics for like a decade.
Years, yeah. Now comics started.
Right,
I remember. Comics was the first one.
Yeah,
to have the rights
IDW
to
has a
that.
license.
That's not Slimer.
Well, they're like, you know, the Ghost Trap only has one button on it. You put two on here. You know what I mean? They're
Yeah.
like super into
That
it.
intense.
Yeah. And I'm sure it's the same thing with Robotech.
Slimer has more teeth.
Yeah, he's got too many.
We know
he's
Slimer ain't got
molars.
that many teeth.
So Reggie, there's a lot of questions in the room that kind of like there's a couple of tardy people who showed up late. I'm looking at y'all who are asking questions. Who asked questions? Yeah, who asked questions that we already kind of got to. But I don't want to live in Kamiko all night. So let's push along a little bit. So after that, and you start kind of self-publishing, how did the industry embrace you, or did you feel like you had an in now because you had been in Kamiko? Did that keep some doors open for you?
Yeah, it kept
forward with your own stuff.
Yeah, it did keep some doors open, but you know, for the most part, I think I was like Leonard Nimoy. I was typecasted. It's like he can't do nothing other than Robotech and his little black and white ninja girl, you know.
Right.
Let him do that good. Let him do that well. You know, he's good at that. So, you know, I was still a quote unquote name among the small press, you know, independent illustrators / publishers, which was still a blessing. Because I mean, I remember once my whole crew went out to the San Diego Comic Convention, and it's like we felt like superstars, you know. And I'm like, man, I mean, I'm nobody, because I'm like, I would love to get my foot into Marvel or DC. You know, I've done my time at Kamiko. I'm self-publishing. I would love to get into Marvel and DC. And that was the time when I was still doing Shuriken. And then I came across the people at Eternity Comics. And they approached me with the idea of doing a second Shuriken book called Blade of Shuriken. So it was like I was near like around 6th issue of my series. And then they gave me an agreement to a contract to do a mini series called Blade of Shuriken, which I illustrated, and it was written by a friend of mine, Wade Winningham, had written it. So that went on for about 5 issues or so. So I was doing Shuriken, I was doing Blade of Shuriken, and then my friends and I, we were publishing our Victory Productions comic books. And that was pretty much it. I never made the transition back into color comic books. You know, once Kamiko was done, I never did another color comic book, you know, during that era again. And so that was, you know, that was a strange time for me, because at the time I was right near the end of doing Blade of Shuriken. You know, I met my future wife. I was like, I'm getting sick and tired of comic books. You know, I think I want to just, I want to start airbrushing. You know, I want to start airbrushing and you know, open up an airbrush shop. You know, and
it was the 80s, right?
It was the 80s, yes.
The 80s,
exactly.
because airbrushing had another resurgence in the 80s.
Oh man, did it. So that was the part where the being young and stupid happened. I had ended up not wanting to do Shuriken anymore. And Eternity at the time was like, well, look, we love your character. We would love to continue putting her out. And I'm like, fine, sure, you can have her. Just gave the character away. Gave her away. You know, signed some type of agreement, never got any type of payment for it, no royalties, no. And they continued putting out Shuriken books, you know, and I never saw a dime, you know, and I didn't care. I was just like, look, I'm on to the next. I got married. I opened up an airbrush shop in Norristown, you know, and I'm rolling.
Wow.
And then
Now, how old were you?
at the time I was 20. I had to be about 26 at the time.
So you're
Maybe
still pretty
25.
you're still pretty young.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And you never had anybody tell you like maybe you should get a lawyer.
Lawyer. Oh no, nothing. You know, at that time I was flying by the seat of my pants. You know, and the crazy part was, I think Shuriken wasn't even on my mind anymore. And Eternity was doing their thing, and they were putting out like 2 other Shuriken titles. They put out Shuriken Cold Steel, which was illustrated by the incredible Christopher Taylor, who right now he still does comics, but he also does amazing realistic 3D illustrations. And they put out another Shuriken series, and none of them really did that well, although Chris Taylor's version was amazing. And at that time, when those books were out, I was now in Philadelphia, and we were looking into trying to open up an airbrush shop on South Street, which happened. And I was just into the whole hip hop thing at the time, airbrushing. I created a comic book called Jam Quacky, the Hip Hop Duck, and that comic book I started just trying to push him to the music industry. Jam Quacky, the Hip Hop Duck was I created it, and it was written by, I don't know how I met this gentleman, but it was written by Eugene McDaniels. Eugene McDaniels wrote the stories, and I illustrated it, and we published it together. And Eugene McDaniels I had no idea until after I met him after a few weeks that he was a well-known singer-songwriter. He wrote Feel Like Making Love for Roberta Flack. He wrote Meet Me on the Moon for Phyllis Hyman. He wrote and performed 100 Pounds of Clay back in the day. And, well-known, incredible.
So is he part of the Philadelphia Soul, kind of the whole Gamble and Huff kind of thing?
I'm not sure, but I could say so, but I think he was before them. He transcended before. He was before that. He was like in the 60s and 50s. He was doing his thing, and he passed, I think, back in 2011. But it was just a fun time creating this comic book about this rapping duck, and I was suddenly able to get in front of a lot of celebrities. I met Tupac once and gave him an airbrush shirt, and then gave him a copy of the comic book, and met Queen Latifah and even Tiny Lister Debo from Friday. he throbbed.
I just got to put that back up. Yeah.
So I was just doing that, doing my thing. And the thing with Shuriken was that I really didn't start feeling some kind of way about giving away my brand until maybe somewhere around 1993, 94. And at the time, I felt that it was probably untouchable, that I couldn't get my character back. Because at the time, Eternity was kaput. They're out of business. And I believe they made the change over into Malibu Comics. And then we know the whole situation. Malibu got bought by Marvel.
Yeah.
And so I was under the impression that my character was now owned by Marvel, And so that's when I really was just like, I can't.
Now, did you ever do a search? Did you ever do a trademark search? Did you ever do a copyright search?
And here's the crazy thing, Mike. Dude, I didn't do a copyright search until 5 months ago.
Wow.
Because this gentleman out of the blue named Tom Fremden had made a YouTube video chronicling the creation and process of Shuriken. You can go to YouTube and just type in Shuriken comic book, and the video will pop up, and it's like an 8-minute video, and he's doing an expose about Shuriken, about how he just remembered one of the books that he admired during the days of the 1980s glut, and he just proceeded to go from when I created it to what happened all the way to when Marvel bought Malibu. And so I will never forget, a few months back, my wife and I were sitting there watching that video, and she was visibly upset. She was like, I cannot believe that, your very first creation is no longer in your hands, and it's possibly owned by Marvel, you know. And a few times over the years, I've written Marvel's law department, never got a
Right.
return. You know, they can write me back. But then, Mike, that's when I said, you know what? Let me go ahead and do my homework and just see. And so I did first of all, I never copyrighted her when I was young. I didn't copyright her. I thought copyright was, you know, pop an envelope, mail it to yourself, get it published. There it is.
Poor man's
So,
copyright. Yeah.
Yeah. So she wasn't copyrighted by me. But then I looked. Eternity never copyrighted her. Malibu never copyrighted
So it didn't say in the indicia copyright.
Yeah, it's a copyright them. But as far as actual copyright, it wasn't copywritten by anyone.
They didn't file it with the copyright office, and
Not at all, and no trademark whatsoever at all. So I jumped on it. I said, you know what? Let me just do like Frank Miller's Ronin. I copyrighted Reggie Byers' Shuriken.
Right.
You know, everything came back. Trademark thing that's a long process, but the copyright,
yes.
Once that came back to my hands, I had that certificate. I said, okay, all systems will go, because Eternity's no longer around. Malibu's no longer around. And here's the crazy part. When Malibu was doing the whole Ultraverse thing, there was a Shuriken in the Ultraverse. Now, this Shuriken was not my character. It wasn't Kyoko Shadara. It was a new character named Brittany Chen, and she had mutant powers. She had a baby, and she was married, and she never had her own book. She was just part of the team, part of the Exiles. So even then, in those Malibu books, it would say Shuriken created by Reggie Byers, you know. But I'm like, that wasn't my Shuriken. They had George Perez create a whole new costume for her and everything. So, you know, the whole Malibu situation, all those characters, that whole universe got shelved, you know, when Marvel said, okay, we're good and done with them. And, you know,
and that was the old Marvel. That was the Ron Perlman Marvel, not the Disney Marvel.
Absolutely. Way before Disney even got a hold of Marvel. Absolutely. And the crazy part is when you Google Shuriken, Malibu Shuriken, you know, their character comes up. And the crazy part is that character was created by a staff of people headed up by one particular gentleman who was the main creator of this new Shuriken. And it's just crazy how life works, man. It's like when people years ago asked certain people, like, well, do you think Marvel could ever bring the Malibu, the Ultraverse characters back? You know, all those different characters, Prime and, you know, and Shuriken and all that. And Joe Quesada was quoted in an interview saying there's a zero chance of that happening, because there's a lot of stuff going on with that. There's a logistical nightmare if we ever even thought about doing it again. He said, plus there's some dirty laundry that we don't even want to talk about. And so I'm not going any further, but I know what the dirty laundry is. And sadly, that dirty laundry is what really has cleared the way for me to go ahead, and I'm free and clear to do it. And
well, that's great, because I mean that's part of the thing about being an artist, is that you're also a businessman, especially if you're creating your own properties. And a lot of young artists don't realize that, don't think about like, oh, I need to do a copyright search, I need to do a trademark search.
Absolutely.
Make sure like the name I came up with somebody else doesn't already own.
Right.
You know, right. I learned all that stuff when I started self-publishing. So the first thing I did is I got a lawyer. I did trademark searches. And if you say to yourself, my idea isn't worth the $300 or whatever it costs to do the trademark search, it's not worth anything. It's
not worth it if you're not going to, you know, invest the time and the finance into doing it, protecting it.
Yeah, and I think the thing is that when you were coming along in I mean, that's the story of comics, right? The Schusters didn't have a lawyer, Bob Kane did, right? That's why Bob Kane's name was on everything, and he made all that money. And the Schusters, Simon and Schuster, were in the poorhouse until the Superman movie came out, and then they got Neil Adams and people kind of shamed them into giving those guys into doing it. but that is the story of entertainment, basically.
That's right.
Is
That's
you
right.
have to do that. And in the 80s, when people started self-publishing, there are people who probably had a lawyer in their family or said, you should run by Uncle so-and-so. He knows somebody or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's one of the things that I always tell young artists right away whenever anybody's serious about doing that is you got to get it. It's worth paying $100 to somebody to just read it.
Yeah.
Tell you, if you can't read it, you don't know what you're signing.
Absolutely.
I had I had several things happen when I first started self-publishing. One of them was a guy tried to sue me right away within the first week for saying I own the trademark on the word planet in comics, which of course is it's just bullshit. There was, you remember that show Big Bad Beetleborgs?
Yes.
Yes.
Right. So they were in a comic book store, I believe, on the show. And then what they wanted is they wanted to put actual comic books in the comic store in the back so you could see them as props. But their contract was worded so that if you gave them that, they basically owned your product and they could do anything they wanted to with it. And I remember reading this and I go, this doesn't sound right. And the guy's, no, that's boilerplate. That's, pretty. I didn't send him any of my. I said, you're not going to go to the NBA and go, I own all of Michael Jordan's licensing. Cool. You own Spider-Man? Marvel's going to give you, Spider-Man and the Hulk and Captain America comics. And they're like, yeah, you totally own the licensing now. Cool.
Wow.
So you have to, if you're not smart, you might end up signing something that years later you've got to sue somebody. And in fact, I was just helping a friend recently who's entering in a partnership with somebody who's writing something and he's going to draw it. And I turned him on to my old agent, Jamar Lafassiere.
Shout out to Jean-Marc.
Right. And I remember in the beginning, Jean-Marc told me that a contract is only as good as the two parties intended to be. So if that other person's intending to screw you, it doesn't matter if you have the contract. All that will do is you will say, okay, I have a contract, so now I'm going to sue you because you said you agreed to do this. Yeah. But they do that all the time in Hollywood. That's why what's her name? ScarJo is suing Disney, right? Because the contract said one thing and they said,
she's like, look, I want that streaming money.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That's deep. It's like, it's so funny. It's like, I anybody that knows me, I'm very much a deeply religious man. And it's just like, I told one of my buddies the other day, I said, God put Shuriken in a trust fund for me for 30 years and then didn't allow me to touch it. Because the last issue of Shuriken that was released by Eternity was 1991. In November, the indicia says November 1991. And here I am releasing this new Shuriken exactly 30 years later, November 2021.
Wow.
So I just feel very fortunate. And I just have a feeling that this thing is going to be exponentially more successful than it was 36 years ago.
So why don't you talk about, because you're doing a Kickstarter for this, right?
Yes, absolutely. I figured that, with the fact that this is something I created so many years ago, I said there's got to be a good amount of people that remember it. And there are. And a lot of these people are now grown men and women who were teenagers back when I did this comic book. Might have been even younger than that. And the outpouring of support that has been coming out since I launched it has been amazing. I reached my goal just 2 days ago, and I launched it like about 13 days ago or so. And the thing is, all I wanted to do is just simply retell the first 4 issues of my original run, but just give it a reboot, just like everybody else does now. Just give it a 2021 reboot. My work has gotten way better since then. There's new things I would like to do with it and retell it. And there's just so many people that are just so supportive on my intention on doing this. and it's really a humbling experience because not all Kickstarters are successful, and even ones that have been around and are being rebooted sometimes are not successful. But but again, there's some that are just wildly successful, like who's the creator? What's his name? The creator of She, SHI.
Well, Billy Tucci. Yeah.
Billy Tucci. I mean, he's doing the She omnibus, and that's just, ooh, it's just wildly, it's off the charts, right now, and it's good to see stuff that was out back then being, rehashed or reprinted or reimagined or rebooted, and it's just nice to be in that number. So this Kickstarter is this new series. I'm just having a ball. I originally was going to do it in black, white, and red, 32 pages, starting off with 4 issues just to retell that first 4-story arc and see what happens after that. But then after I was so blown away with the fact that the goal was reached a couple of days ago, I said, you know what? I'm going to put this out in color. So that's my announcement for the show tonight.
You heard it here first.
Going to heard it first on pencil to pencil.
So that's your stretch goal.
Color. That's
your
not even a stretch goal. That's just a thank you.
Oh, okay.
So it's going to. I'm going to bite the bullet on a couple of dollars, but it's going to be full color. The stretch goals will be posted on Friday, and there's going to be a number of really, really, really nice stretch goals. Speaking of Christopher Taylor, who illustrated Shuriken Cold Steel years ago for Eternity, he did an incredible, realistic rendering of Shuriken. If a Japanese woman was to actually portray her in a live action movie, and it's just so beautiful. So that will be one of the stretch goals. It will be a variant cover. Funny how the word variant is just like so used right now.
Yeah,
between Loki and between Lambda and Delta, it's just variant season. So there'll be a variant cover done by Christopher Taylor. And there's a variant cover in this Kickstarter where the title is in Japanese kanji and not in English. Just very few runs of this particular variant covers. But I'm excited. I really, really am. And I spoke it months ago. I said, this is going to be the year of my second renaissance. I'm just going to take my babies that I created many years ago and bring them back. I'm bringing back Shuriken. I'm bringing back my Egyptian heroine character, Crescent, along with Aaron Beatty. And I'm bringing back Jam Crack. So it's time to go full circle.
Steve Conley just backed it. Nice.
Thank you, Steve. God bless you, man.
That's the power. P2P power right there.
P2P power.
That's right.
Steve is in color, man.
So, I would love to talk a little bit. Reggie, how you feeling? We've already crossed the hour mark.
I'm probably like another 15 or so because I got daughters and wives pulling at me.
Yeah.
Life is in singular.
Right. Why not wives?
Wives.
I wanted to talk a little bit about your art style because especially back in that space, there weren't a lot of people doing a kind of like an Eastern style, maybe, right? And you have really heavy mangaka influences in your cartooning. And how did that come about, and how did you kind of strengthen that? And you've kind of stayed in that lane for a huge part of your properties. How did tell us a little bit how wearing that has been for your career?
It's been wonderful, but it's so funny. It's like when it comes to kind of like jumping off track real quick, but like when I was doing the airbrushing thing years later, one of the main influences when it came to graffiti artists and hip hop artists who illustrated and airbrushed artists was anime and manga. You could tell by the characters' eyes and the proportion size, large head, and the body's like 3 heads tall, and so it's like that influence for me. I was a big fan of Astro Boy, Reggie Masamuto's Captain Harlock, Kimber the White Lion. So it's like I've always loved that style anyway. And I always said that if I was going to be able to actually draw my own comic book, I would try to go with that extremely intense style, that stark black and white look. Because of the fact, first of all, I couldn't afford to do a colored book.
Mhm.
So I was like, if I'm going to do it in black and white, it's got to have some type of impact, to make a reader say, I can't believe I'm choosing this over X-Men on the shelf of this retailer, but I'm taking this,
Right.
And it just kind of stuck. And then I think with the fact that was my favorite way of drawing comics is probably the main reason that Kimiko gave me a chance to draw Robotech. But I think, my name came up in conversation, like, Reggie loves an anime stuff. Give him a shot on one of those books,
Mhm.
And to this day, when I'm drawing comics, it always seems to be the style that I always gravitate towards.
Were you reading a lot of manga then? Were you reading like Takahashi's stuff and people like that, like Ramen and Inuyasha? Well, Inuyasha was later, but
yeah, I
there
think
was
it was
like,
you know what, back then I think I was looking at a lot of Tezuka's work if I could get it.
Yeah.
It's just like you had to go to a store that sold.
you had to go to New
manga.
York, basically,
Yeah.
right? You had to go to
Mhm.
New York, right?
Absolutely.
Like Forbidden Planet or something, I think was one of the places that had stuff.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
a wonderland. Oh gosh, if you were able to make it to New York, that's where you could get your manga. And Forbidden Planet was a wonderland. That's
Right.
for sure.
You're not getting that at the Walton Books.
No.
Yeah, that was what, 10, 15 years later.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Then you would
Yeah.
go to Borders and you had the Borders girls all reading.
Borders. Woo. Borders just has a whole section, of manga and a whole section of graphic novels. And sadly, the Borders in my area in Willow Grove, they're gone. They're out of business.
Yeah.
The whole company's gone.
Yeah.
The whole company's gone.
The whole company's been gone for years now. Yeah.
What? So is there one still down Sun City?
No, that's been gone since like 2012 or 13.
What?
Wait, the Barnes and Noble you're talking about? Or
No,
Borders?
the Barnes and Noble
Borders is gone.
Borders is gone.
Borders is
Borders is
gone.
like a
Borders
Walgreens or something.
Borders is gone a long time
Yeah,
ago.
Barnes and Noble is on its way out though. Yeah.
Yeah.
It feels like it.
I can keep up with Amazon. That's the problem.
So Eternity says, Reggie, you're the OG American manga. You, Adam Warren, and Ben Dunn. How do you feel about
Wow, you put my name in the same conversation as Adam Warren? Whew. He was the man. He was the man. And Ben Dunn, my joke for Ben Dunn's name was always like, I'm going to do this manga idea. Nope. Ben Dunn. I'm going to do this manga idea. Nope. Ben Dunn. Because Ben Dunn did he was the hardest working man in American manga. He was, oh gosh, he was no joke.
That's
It was funny because I think there was definitely, I remember when Marvel published Akira, and there was definitely a resistance within the mainstream
Which was
against that. I mean, I've heard all these stories, Marvel did publish Akira. And they supposedly turned down I heard they turned down the Turtles. You hear all these stories where you would think, okay, if you're a publisher and there's this other thing that's hot. In the old days, they would put like, oh, gorillas are popular, we're gonna have gorillas on every. We're gonna they did Planet of the Apes, they did whatever they thought was popular.
I was still blown away when Marvel reprinted ElfQuest. I was like, you're really stepping into an area that I had no idea you even knew anything about.
Right.
But there were definitely at that time in the mid 80s to the 90s, there was definitely there was Crumb underground kind of stuff. There was the stuff like you guys were doing. There was stuff that like Pacific was doing, which is like independent, but not the manga and not the underground. And everybody everybody was like in their lane and like don't cross the streams. And now that all kind of seemed to is kind of disappeared because there really is no there is not those border. Even when you would go to a show, like it was always sort of segregated. Where you're like, here's the underground people, here's the anime people in Artist Alley. You could even go to a show, and it was kind of like set up like, here's the Marvel people, here's the DC or the mainstream people, here's the anime people, here's the furry people. Because even within,
let's not forget the furry people,
right?
Goodness, but you know what? The one furry book that I ever collected, that I continued to collect back then, well, actually it was two, was to this day I still buy it. It's Usagi Yojimbo, Stan Sakai. I mean, he's a true OG. But back then the furry thing, Cutie Bunny by Joshua Quagmire.
Wow.
Oh, I remember. I've never bought it, but I've heard of it. Yeah.
But that whole furry thing, man, I never could quite understand that. I'm like,
so Reggie, we want to. I don't want to wrap you up, but I know you want to go. But we haven't touched. There's so many things we haven't touched on. Like we haven't touched on your Christian comics.
Kids of the King.
We haven't talked about Afro Boy and Puff Girl.
No. Dun, dun, dun.
Well, maybe if you want to just give people a kind of like put some sandwich in between the bread here.
Sure. Well, like most comic artists and like most creators, you know, we as creators, I'm sure you agree, Jamar and Mike, it's like we are constantly bombarded with inspirations and ideas. And I'm no different. Every couple of years, I would create something new. I remember one year when I was in my airbrush shop on South Street. I mean, I actually believe I audibly heard a voice saying, "You're doing all this wonderful stuff, but you haven't done anything to represent me." And that's when I just started sketching out these little kids with these crosses on their shirts. And they were popular as just airbrush t-shirts, this little, tough looking young boy with a big cross on his shirt, you know, and so, yo man, that's dope. I go to church, let me buy that shirt. You know, and then I took the characters and I said, let me put them in a comic book, and Kids of the King was born. And Kids of the King has been out now for over 15 years.
Wow.
It got, after the third year of me, my wife and I self-publishing it, got picked up by a major publisher in Chicago, and they distributed across the country to churches like all over the country. And it even got a one episode animated cartoon done in 2008. In 2008, really well done, beautiful one episode animated cartoon. Really high end Flash animation, and it was produced by a gentleman by the name of Peter Peros, who's one of the actors on Tyler Perry's The Have and the Have-Nots. And Peter now owns the rights to Kids of the King, because we believe that, my wife and I believe, he can take it to another level. He's in Hollywood. He's around a lot of people. And when he was shopping around the cartoon before, he couldn't get it in because he didn't own the rights. But we've been friends with Peter for so many years. And we sold the rights to him. But the wonderful thing about Peter is that we have still royalties that will come based on whatever he does with it. And the new Kids of the King series that he's going to put out, I'm writing it, but he has somebody else drawing it, which is cool, which is fine by me.
That's super
And
cool,
of course, then there's the Duck, Jam Quacky, which I want to bring him back. And then Crescent was a one-time thing, 1996.
I got mine.
1996. That's a bad girl.
I think you signed mine at the food court.
Really? Something else. Yeah, man. So the food court. That's the food on it. So we're Aaron Beatty and myself. We're right now talking with a publisher, and we'll probably solidify a deal within the next month or so. And that'll be coming out in full color in 2022. And then my babies. Lastly, Afro Boy and Puff Girl. Afro Boy and Puff Girl is what I would call a local thing. Afro Boy and Puff Girl is this Batman and Robin sort of thing, where it's this older brother and little sister that got these superpowers. Very much not unlike the Flash, where there was this huge bolt of lightning and the city of it just suddenly got bombarded with superpowered teens and children. And long story short, Afro Boy and Puff Girl are part of a bigger plan of something that has to be done in order to protect the children of Philadelphia from this coming evil. called the scourge. The scourge.
The
So,
scourge. Gotcha.
The scourge. Yeah. So I think the one thing my wife always tells me is like, wait, as soon as you start getting hot with something, you create something else. I'm like, well, just call me Jack Kirby. Call me Black Kirby.
Right.
Yeah.
That never hurt Kirby, right? Yeah.
Right.
You
Also,
should have a drawer full of ideas.
our good buddy, the notorious JRD, J. Robert Dean, says, kudos, Reggie, for your Kamala Harris book giving young girls profiles of inspirational Black women from history to draw from for the future. So,
Thank you, Mr. Deans. I forgot all about that. That's not even a...
He's got to go in the archives and pull that
I got to
out.
go in the archive. Yeah, I just put this out earlier this year. It's a children's book called MVP Kamala and Me. And it's a really cute children's book where basically it starts off where a little girl is just elated that a woman of color is about to be the vice president of the United States. But throughout the book, it's really a Black history book that tells you about all the women that came before her that paved the way. Like Shirley Chisholm, Fannie Lou Hamer, Ida B. Wells. And it did fairly well on Amazon. It's really cute children's book, for little girls and for young men, for little boys as well. Just letting girls know that, look, you can be anybody you want to be. You can be anything you want to be. You just got to put your mind to it and don't pay attention.
So that's on Amazon right now? That's right on Amazon right now?
Yes, if you search it, you'll find it on Amazon. MVP Kamala and Me.
And also, I want to give a shout out to my best bud, Carlos, who has a connection to you, Reggie. Carlos says, Reggie was one of my biggest inspirations for really sinking my teeth in the airbrushing, meeting him at the shop on South Street.
Well, you remember the South Street store.
Philly, what up?
Thank you, Carlos.
Philly, stand up. Yeah, and
that was the pre-Johnny Rocket South Street.
Yeah,
man, right.
That's
Johnny
where
Zip came and went.
That's Zipperhead South Street. That's all.
Zipperhead. Oh my gosh, the stores that have come and gone on South Street.
Yeah,
including my store.
and you know what? And just maybe to put a button in this, Reggie has talked. We touched on a very long career, and you're still in the mix. I'm really excited about your new Kickstarter. It's going really well. You have 15 days left.
Yeah, which is wonderful.
And are you going? I think I missed that part. Are you going to do any stretch goals, or are you just going to keep it rocking?
Yeah, I'm gonna post them on Friday. Absolutely, and they're really going to be fun. Really going to be fun. Absolutely.
Very cool. All right. Well, you know what? We should try to wrap up. Mike always says this at the end. Mike always asks, do you have any inspirational words for up and coming creators or people who want to kind of touch on self-publishing but don't know where to start, or any? We need a good word, Reggie.
The good word is don't eat yellow snow. No, the good word is gosh, do not give up. Don't give up. Stay inspired. And the thing is, with the fact that we are living in an age what my pastor calls a microwave society. Everything that you get is right there for you.
Yeah.
As opposed to being intimidated by the things that you see, or being challenged to try to be like somebody else that you see on the internet or on Instagram or Facebook. Be inspired, because there's something that you have in your spirit that somebody else is going to gravitate to once you put it out there and turn it from an idea to an actual physical thing. Don't be afraid. Stay inspired. Don't give up. There is an audience for everything. There really is. And with the fact that we have shows like this, YouTube tutorials, it's just the playing field is so much larger for anybody who wants to do whatever they want to do. And so, that's my word. Is just don't give up. 58 years old, I'm still not giving up.
I love it. Reggie Byers, your inspiration, and you continue to be one. I love that everybody's crossed paths at some point in their career, and I'm very proud of you, bro. It's always, yeah. I ran into Reggie a couple weeks ago at the post office.
At the post office.
And, like, I was coming, he was going. Everybody had masks on. I was like, Reggie. Reggie was like, "Yo,
See, that
proves
proves that everybody would be able to tell Bruce Wayne was Batman, because you didn't see that much. You only saw that much of his head, and you go, Reggie. See, Reggie.
Right. Exactly.
Well, you know what, so Reggie, you're getting a lot of love tonight. You already got a couple of extra boosts to your Kickstarter from this podcast.
I thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. This is great, man. And you know, you're welcome back anytime. Let us know how the Kickstarter ends, and we'll let people know on the podcast. All right, I shall release you to your family, Reggie Byers.
Oh, let my girl say hi to y'all real quick.
All right, cool.
Come on, she's been so patient all this time. This is
my
girl.
Oh,
yeah, this is Cactus. Cactus is she's a bearded dragon. She's been patient the whole time. She's like, when are you gonna feed me? So say hello to the guys.
Say hello to Fetching, Agnes.
Yeah, this is my girl. My buddy.
That's wild. Yes, so, and as we all know, black does not crack. Did you say 58?
58. Man,
yes,
good. I am. Thank you. Thank you, Turner team. Yes,
all right, brother. Well, you enjoy the rest of the evening. Thanks so much, and good luck with the campaign.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Oh, we got a Kirby hand.
Well, we'll wrap up and we'll Kirby hands.
Okay.
So, but yeah, thanks everybody for hanging out and watching our conversation with Reggie Byers. It's crazy how I don't know. It's just like the vein goes so deep through all of this, Mike, and we all kind of come in at different. It's almost like a highway, and everybody has a different exit.
Well, comics is a smaller business than people think it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and especially in Philly, in New York, most people. It's not 6 degrees of separation. It's like 1 or 2 degrees of separation.
Yeah. If that. Right. So there's a lot of echo. But yeah, and that's just also what's scary when you have people who are like burning bridges in comics.
That's the other advice. Don't burn bridges.
Don't chase waterfalls. Don't go chase a waterfall. All right. Well, I think we'll put this to bed, guys. We had a great time hanging out. I'm going to announce pretty soon our next guest for next week. Mike and I are still finalizing a schedule of guests. We have Mike. What do you say? We have like maybe 2 or 3 guests coming, and then we'll do another boot camp because we had to postpone our boot camp.
Right. The God of Thunder said no boot camp.
So yeah, we're gonna get back to that. So
what was it last week? Was it 9 tornadoes in that supercell that went through Philadelphia? We've been having some pretty crazy weather.
Yeah, it's been wild. And every time the wind starts shifting, everybody gets nervous because the power can just go out like that.
You better get your home generator.
I know that's a big thing. Everybody's like, generator or no generator. Because if you get a generator, the whole neighborhood's upset that it's so loud.
Yeah, except they'll be like, "Hey, can I plug in?
Can I put my ice cream in your freezer?
Can Janice and I plug in? You mind, right?"
JRD says boot camp. He's very excited. He wants to see more Adventures of Man Bun Man.
Man Bun. I wonder what's happened to man. Maybe Man Bun has succumbed to the corona. I don't know. He seems like the kind of guy that wouldn't, he wouldn't wear a mask and social distance. So maybe he's not around anymore.
Oh, poor Man Bun Man. So, all right, guys, look for more information from us. And Mike has been posting some really cool process videos on the YouTube channel. If you're not already subscribed to our YouTube channel, because we still have Facebookers out there, and I love you Facebookers. But you should pop over to the YouTube. We're trying to get our numbers up.
And I'm trying to share some cool drawing tutorials. I just put up an inking one of the Phantom. I'm going to put up some drawing ones. I'm working on stuff now. So I've been pretty busy with just regular work. So I sort of have to do things in bits and then have to stitch it together. I'm doing it in iMovie. So
yeah, and more to come. So I look forward to seeing you guys next time. Please let us know what you think of the podcast. Everybody does this as a labor of love, and your comments and love helps us along. All right, guys, thanks so much. We're going to put this to bed. For my best bud, Mike Manley, I'm Jamar Nicholas. You know what to do now. Don't forget to wash those Kirby hands. Oh, I like that purple glow. Look at that. That's nice.
Oh.
All right, you guys.
All right.
See you soon.
Night.
Good night.